Okay. I hate computers. All right. Hi, I'm Asher Glick. I used to be the lead mentor of RCOS. Now I'm not. I'm coming back this summer to give you guys a talk, half part on how to make good projects well, and another half part on some suggestions on how to enhance RCOS in the future, which now that we have so many more people than there used to be, should probably happen. Okay, so a lot of times when people start projects, they have no idea where to go. So I laid out just a brief how you start an application. So you start off with creating an idea. You have to come up with an idea in order to do anything. Then you research the idea. Then you submit a project proposal to wherever you're submitting. In this case, it's RCOS. You begin programming, realize while you're programming that you have no idea what you're still doing, do more research, go back to programming, and then continue that second loop over and over and over. Which is why whenever you see a schedule with something on it like learn JavaScript in a week, that's not happening. You're not going to learn all of JavaScript in a week. You'll learn how to the syntax of it, but it's much better when you're planning out what you're going to do in your project to just jump right into it and realize everything you don't know and learn on the way. Oh, that's fun. All right. So the hardest part of a program is getting started. If you don't have a base set of features, it's really hard to continue on adding new features to your project. You don't have a working version, it's not stable, you can't get new developers on it, and it's really hard to demo. Not only that, but everything breaks all the time because it's not always working. Now, there's actually supposed to be something. Can I move this screen down just a little bit? This actual screen?
I think so.
Do you know how? The
You press the lever.
lower. Awesome. That's fine.
That's as low as it goes.
Yeah, that's great. All right. So what you want to do actually is when you start a project, you want to spend every possible hour that you can working on it until you get a first stable version. You don't want to say, okay, I'm going to take a pizza. Well, no, you want to take pizza breaks. That's how we write code. Pizza Mountain Dew equals code. We don't want to say, I'm going to go off and play Skyrim for 108 hours like I did last week. And you want to just say, hey, I want to spend this whole weekend, right, 10 hours a day trying to nail out how to get WebSockets to work on my Django application, which is impossible. But after you get that basic core feature working, you're already leaps and bounds ahead of everyone else who just has an idea, a concept, and a few pieces of code with some strange features here and there. So what do you want to do next? Well, next, you want to start adding more features. These are all your features and goals that you came up with in your project proposal. The things that you want to be able, your program to be able to do in the future. You want to start writing documentation in order to allow other people, including yourself, to figure out what your program does and how to start it. If you write a piece of code, you're going to come back to it a month later, and you're no longer going to be the guy that wrote it. You're going to be the guy that watched somebody else write it because you don't remember yourself writing it anymore. It was so long ago. And you want to try and recruit other developers, anybody at all who will use or develop your program. Even if it's just people testing out your program, submitting bugs to you. You just get, hey, I found this new bug. It's only in the case of Windows XP running in a virtualized machine on Zen that runs Ubuntu. But it just has a kernel problem. Fix this line. You're like, that's the only issue, but you're going to create a really robust program just by finding all of these different issues. But in order to do that, you need documentation for your developers. You need your developers to start and understand how to install your program. You're not going to get a new developer on your team if they can't install your program. They're going to download or clone your Git repo, try and install it, the install will fail, or they won't even try and install it because they won't know where to start, and then give up. You need to also talk about somewhere in your repo or somewhere in your code base you want to add what features you want to add to your program, where you want your program to go. If I decide that I want to join up on your program and I start making a feature that makes the entire UI green, but no, you wanted it to be blue, you want me to know that I shouldn't have made it green before I start making it green, or else I'm going to create a fork of your project and you're never going to see any of my code. You also want to just give a brief explanation of what any large package or file does. If you create some great background API that no one knows what it does because it's 100,000 lines of code, they don't want to read all that, then they're not going to use it. You need to create some kind of just brief documentation of, hey, this is a Java class, it takes in these arguments. This is a Python class, it takes in an infinite number of arguments. These are the ones that you should use. Things like that. Just so your developers can actually fix problems in there. And you just want to create a sample diagram of your data pathways. Like where does your data come in, where does it leave? That doesn't have to be too complicated. You can literally say, you know, like, image goes into my program, it turns it green, then sends it out. Like, that's all the program does. I know there were several programs that were described to me. I'm like, oh, that's a really cool program. I have no idea when you would use it. I know why you'd use it, but not when or where. So then you need to know, how do you document these things? When you're creating all this code, what do you use in order to give these documents to everyone else? And the easiest way is a wiki. Wikis can be edited by anybody. Anybody can contribute to them. There's really nice linking structure to get everywhere. You can just instantly create a new page. And it's a really great just development version of documentation. And it lets you get very lengthy instructions on how to do everything up on the internet for people to view. The next step would be getting your own custom website. In order to get your own custom after you get your own custom website, you can start reorganizing how your information is displayed. For example, your installation instructions that your developer needs to install, you have pretty much the same instructions for all three of the major operating systems, but 2 paragraphs are different between Windows, Mac, and Linux, and installing on BSD. And you don't want to give them 4 different pages with it all laid out with different instructions that 55 of the paragraphs are all the same, and then 2 are switched. That's just way too much information. Nobody really wants to read that. Plus, when your developer is using more than one system, you can very easily tell them, hey, this is how you do it for Linux, this is how you do it for Windows. Like, everything else is the same. You don't need to worry about that. And lastly, blog posts. Blog posts are actually a great way of documentation because they are what allows you to keep up on how current your documentation is. Just by documenting in a blog post, hey, I just wrote this feature, this is how it works. Like, these are the call functions, these are the return values. You can tell all of your developers that are currently working on the bleeding edge with you what you just did and how it works. And when you ever get to another stable version or another release candidate or anything along the lines of that, you would take what you did in your blog post and use that as documentation for yourself. Because you probably won't remember the 4th feature you wrote after you get to your 50th feature when you're going back and adding all of those features to your wiki or your website. And then we get to, all right, this is a lot of work. You have to do a whole lot of stuff to write good code. So why would you want to do any of this? Why can't I just write a program that reads RFID readers and send it off to Colin and have him fix some bugs on his own with no documentation? I mean, why would I do that? So you want to do these so new developers can join your projects. Like I said earlier, if you have a new developer, they can't join a broken project. They can't test the code that they've written for you on your system because your system won't work. And if they can't test their code, they can't run their code, they can't debug their code, they'll give up pretty quickly because you can't fix things that you can't see, sort of. Along the lines of that, another thing that you should realize is other people are viewing your code besides you. So if you haven't pushed a feature, like if you have this brand new awesome feature that you haven't pushed, it's not there. You know, I could walk up and I could say, hey, I just wrote this new feature that turns lead into gold by typing cout gold, right? And you're not going to believe me until it's on GitHub or whatever. And that constitutes the idea of something that you hear in very large companies like GE or Microsoft, or not so much Microsoft, but other big non-software companies, of a term called vaporware, which if anyone doesn't know what that is a full-fledged application with documents, slideshows, presentations, tutorial books with no lines of code written. It's fun because these programs do exist and they just cause sinkholes in budgets, and they're a large portion of people who don't know how to code or haven't hired the right developers just missing out on the actual program that needs to be there, and money just disappears. And I know this is what I was like. I remember my first project here at RCOS. It was a project I hate talking about. It was called Flick. I worked on it with one of my friends, and it failed horribly. More 3 remembers. It was a program that tried to allow you to put windows onto other computers, so I could take a window on my computer and share it over to someone else's computer. We tried to use like X forwarding. That doesn't work. And when you get to that point in RCOS, your first project, and you hit a point where you realize this can't be done, or this is going to take hundreds of hours instead of like the 10 hours I thought it would this weekend to implement this feature. You need to realize that, step back, maybe try a different feature, or realize that your project shouldn't be done yet. Maybe you need more experience before you can do it and pick up a different project. In RCOS, that's happened before, and it works out fine. You just switch projects in the middle because you realize either there's nothing left that you want to add, or that your project can't be done, or that your project has already been done in an OpenBSD license, and instead of working on your own project, you decide you're just going to help contribute to them. They're all very valid ways of switching. Which brings me into what are the ways that we can make RCOS better, which is the second part of my presentation. So there are 5 things that I came up with that I think would make RCOS a much more fun and easier place to exist, especially for the new people. First off, the mentor system. The mentor system is pretty new. It's only a couple years old. Colin's only the 3rd lead ever. So we don't have a good way of figuring it all out. So we need to redo that. And we need to create like finite roles in order to alleviate the stress from our wonderful professors in the back, because they have real jobs as professors. We need to create introduction materials and tutorials, just brief overviews of what are we going to do when we start a project, templates for proposals and presentations, and a few observatory upgrades are also necessary. Just here and there, some things need to be fixed. We monkey patch a lot. And office space, which I'm not going to go that much into in this presentation because we have the new spaces over there, and I don't know what's going to happen to them in the next few years. So I'm going to leave that to other people to figure out, which I'm sure they were. So I'm going to start by talking about mentors. So we need real mentors, right? Not just people with the mentor title. Mentors need to change the way that projects are selected. We don't want to exclude anyone, mind you. We want to try and get everyone as possible, as many people as possible in RCOS. But the idea is that mentors would select the projects that they want to mentor. And each mentor is required to pick a set number of projects. We started this last semester, but it fell apart because there weren't enough rules. And if a project isn't selected by a mentor, then that's when the project needs to be re-examined. The applicant needs to reevaluate their project, resubmit it. And of course, you don't want to end up in some kind of situation where the RCOS mentors, like 20 years down the line, have become an elite organization that if you annoy the wrong people, they won't ever let you in, which is why we need professors who aren't like that. We need really chill guys to bring on new mentors.
It can never be that people.
Right, to bring
it will still be there.
to bring on new mentors in order to grab up these projects that were left behind. And then that provides some added benefits for mentors, which is when a project begins, that project will have a set mentor. So right when you start your semester, you know who you can go to if you need help with anything. I can't get this Git repo to work. Oh, we'll talk to this guy. He's your mentor. Like, he will be your mentor for this semester. He's in charge of you. And with that, each mentor will be able to easily submit a brief weekly statement of, hey, all of my projects are well, or hey, this project hasn't pushed any code in the last 3 weeks. That's because 2 of them are in a coma and the 3rd one got hit by a bus and the 4th one is just doing research. And the 4th one is doing research in the hospital to visit his other 3 members. And there's, in my opinion, there needs to be some extra kind of reward to make mentoring worth it. Because you do have to do more work, you actually have to do more stuff, you have to come up, you have to think about it. Maybe even if it's as simple as you have to read the email and memorize the presentations that are happening before the meeting starts. And that can be anything as simple as at the end of the semester, the mentors all get to go out for pizza and ice cream. To the mentors get extra money or extra credits wouldn't work. But something very simple that someone else would have to figure out due to logistics. So that brings me into my next point of introduction material. If you're a new student, what are you going to do when you start? You have no idea what you're doing. I know I didn't. I had to talk to people who are already here. So a video to get everything you need in order to get set up would be great. Just listing off some brief components of how to use Git briefly, or here's a tutorial on how to use Git. How to set up GitHub, Bitbucket, Google Code, or SourceForge. I remember we had a lot of problems with one guy who was using SVN on Google Code and could not get it to work with Observatory. So just how to get it to work, how to get all those things to work on Observatory. And though it's not a big deal, it really changes a whole lot when everyone has a Gravatar. And you go to the developers page, and there's everyone. Can't believe there's a mentor that doesn't have one. I should not be looking at the same person every time, by the way.
Right, the Jora is the culprit, yeah. As I put that, we had a rule, all the mentors should have the photos so that people know whom to talk to.
Yeah.
This applies to everybody, but so especially we tend to forget who you are, and each time we have to ask somebody else who that person is, and
So, just by putting your picture online, even if you don't want your face, putting like your handle, what you use for everything else online, is just a great way to express yourself as, hey, these are all the actual people developers, instead of, hey, here are all the Space Invaders. Did you have a question?
Yeah. Are you certain ones to be a video? Because videos are usually like long and annoying, like maybe like a couple of short paragraphs, or maybe both, but like
It
I
could be
hate
a couple short videos.
Okay. Like if it's broken up into not like 1 hour long thing.
Right, an hour-long thing would be too much, but again, even if you just had like, here's the 10 minutes of everywhere you need to go in order to figure out what you need to do, something very simple of, I have no idea what I'm doing, what do I do? So then, again, with people who have no idea what they want to do, coming straight into RCOS, hearing about it off the street, and they just want to get in and eat some free pizza with us and write wonderful code, how do you write a proposal? So some just very brief proposal templates and guidelines would be great. Just a collection of everyone's proposals that have ever been submitted in one place that you can go in and look at is always very useful. You just have this giant repo of code. I mean, proposals, yeah. Just online somewhere that's just, hey, this is Colin's proposal from 1999. It's obviously not this Colin. I just picked a random date. Anyways, so you can just see all these proposals from back in the day when we were all a few years younger. And see, all right, this is what they wrote, maybe I can write it like this, along with a few guidelines. Like, in your project proposal, you need a schedule enumerating all of the tasks that you're going to try and accomplish each week, maybe some backup tasks if you can't get it done. You need a brief description about what your project is, and how it's going to be done, maybe its current progress, and a few other things that are needed just to synchronize all the projects together so that everyone knows what they're doing. But proposals aren't the only thing that you have to do that are possibly new. The other thing that you have to do that you may have never had to do before, coming in as a freshman or a sophomore, is give a presentation in front of a bunch of people. So some just simple presentation templates. We've already done a very good job with getting all of the videos that people take of our presentations on YouTube, so you can pretty easily see, hey, these are all the presentations people have done before. But there are simple things like, who do you thank at the end of the presentation that isn't overtly stated to you? Well, you thank the professors, you thank RCOS, and you thank Sean O'Sullivan because he gave us a ton of money and really made us able to start this amazing project. And a set of guidelines for the presentations. I know there were, a few years back, there was a student who decided that he was going to come in as a new RCOS member, and he just started swearing in every other word, Colin.
That was me.
Which, don't get me wrong, it was a very controversial and amazing presentation, but it wasn't the best thing that you want on RCOS. And then you want some common practices for how to demo your software. Like, you probably want to show up 10, 20 minutes early, actually test it out on the projector, make sure it works. Like I said, when I was trying to set up, I would be yelling at myself for this. So you just want to make sure that your demo works. And if your demo doesn't work, or if it has the possibility of not working, just take a video of it working beforehand. If your live demo doesn't work, just go to your next slide. It's a video of your live demo working in the past. That's good. Another thing to notice is that even if you don't have time to practice and memorize every slide of your presentation, that's all right. There are little tricks that you can do. I didn't have enough time to memorize every slide, but I'm able to predict what slides are coming next because I have this little grayed out text box in the corner telling me the title of the next slide. How many people notice that? 1, 2. All right, see? 2 people out of the entire room noticed that this slide wasn't practiced for hours and hours and hours. So this brings me to my last point, observatory upgrades. So these are a few upgrades that I think would be great in an observatory. I would love if I could even implement them myself, but a smiley per person. We have a smiley for the entire project, which is the smiley face for people who aren't, you're all internet literate. And it turns green when you do well, and it turns red when you're doing horribly. Sometimes it turns red just because like you've had trouble syncing your Git repo or your blog, and that's again good for mentors. Hey, Mr. Mentor, this isn't syncing. It's saying I've never updated anything. That's wrong. I've written a ton of code. I've done a ton of blog posts, but it doesn't say anything. But giving person by person prevents one guy from carrying a project and the other people from falling through the cracks. And at this point in time, when RCOS is hitting or nearing the end of its funding, you want less and less people to fall through the cracks. It's okay if your project doesn't work. It's okay if your project fails. But it's not okay if you don't do any work. You have to be trying to complete your project, even if all you learn is what not to do in Python at the end of your project. Like, a lot of people don't know what not to do in Python. The smileys also right now are just based on how recently you pushed your code, how recently you updated your blog. So if you have a red smiley face because you haven't updated in 4 weeks or however long it is, we used to have competitions before RCOS of who could be in the top when the RCOS meeting started. We got to the point that people were writing blog posts from their phones and updating it during the other person's presentation. So when you pulled up the observatory page, they were no longer at the top and you were. It was quite fun. But it needs to be something that can't be done, is the thing. So just making an average of, hey, what were your smiley values of the last week? Like if you wrote a blog post at the beginning of the week, you'll have a smiley face all week, which means that you'll have a smiley face, and then it'll start to turn into a frowny face. And that'll prevent people from jumping around really quickly, and it'll give you a much better sense of, hey, what's actually going on with this project. And the ability to assign mentors to projects, like I said before, if you can't come to the RCOS meeting, some people have classes in the middle of the meeting. Hopefully they'll show up to like the office hours, the hackathons afterwards, or participate for free. But you need to know who your mentor is. You're new, you don't know everyone's names. There's no way you could. There's a ton of us now. So just being able to see a picture of who your mentor is, like I need to talk to this guy at the next meeting, or I need to find out where this guy lives and talk to his dog because something. Anyways, and a better talk sign-up system. Google Docs is great, it's functional, it works, but like Colin said, there needs to be a better way of signing up talks. You need to have a set number of talks that need to be given every week, and what I think would be the best way to do that is to have people sign up for talks normally to fill up whatever slots there are. But if there's no talk or an empty slot, it gets filled automatically the week before or some number of days before. And then you also fill an extra slot of someone who might not be presenting that day, just in case one of the presentations gets canceled or someone gets sick or someone just destroyed their code by lighting their computer on fire because they forgot to re-enable their fan. Things like that, you want to have a backup ready. And that way someone will have prepared a talk, and talks aren't that hard to prepare, and they'll be ready for the next week when they will be presenting. And that'll always get everyone able to do everything. And that's it. So just thanks to everyone at RCOS, Professor Morthy, Professor Goldschmidt, thanks for having me back and listening to my half-hour talk. Are there any questions?
Yes. So, as the guy so all of your projects have mentors. I don't think a single mentor's done anything with regards to being the mentor of any project, except maybe you.
Yeah.
Okay. But I feel like what might work better is rather than forcing every project to have a mentor in the sense that like we force them to be, and if no mentor picks them, they're in trouble. Because like that's what we do now. We force every project to have a mentor, and it sort of dies in the fire. What we do is we force all the new projects to have mentors, and then all the other projects, you're either a mentor, either there's a mentor in your project, or you've chosen someone else to be your mentor, and so that way the onus is on the person rather than like the group to figure it out.
Yeah, even if it's just new projects need a mentor, there needs to be some way to get the people up and running, and some way to prevent the old people from not doing anything.
Yeah, it depends on what we're defining all of the, I guess, responsibilities of mentor be. If it's
Right.
just to help new people along and not to sort of enforce that you're actually doing stuff, that's different. And it doesn't really matter whether a group's picking their own mentor or whatever. But if where the mentor is supposed to sort of be the person making sure everyone does their work and writes code, then groups picking their own mentors is going to promote
Right.
mentors.
And it's not so much you got to make sure that everyone's doing their work and writing code. Observatory does that pretty well. It's you got to check out what's happening when Observatory says that they're not doing well. This is a very fine line between doing research and doing nothing, because neither of those produce actual tangible code. One of those, however, should be producing blog posts.
That's right, yeah. So, by the way, I read every one of your blog posts. I read every one, so at least you have one reader. When I used to write, I had 0 readers. But even then, I used to post regularly. Only this semester, I'm giving that to Dave Goldschmidt has to take over. That's right. Otherwise, I write every week. And I maintain, my wife says, well, at least you write so that you have an account of what has been done. So it is a good practice to write, and it is always a good practice to write. And if you go and join a company, you have to write a weekly report every week. In fact, 2 weekly reports. When I went on a sabbaticals, the beginning of the week you have to tell what you are going to do that week, and the end of the week you say how much you have accomplished. So these are all good training for yourself, how to work actually.
Yeah, and along the lines of like making sure everyone is doing stuff when you have projects that are 4 people large versus projects that are 1 people large, 1 person. The projects with 4 people should theoretically be producing more stuff, even if it's not like more working code, because you do have more overhead communication trying to get that all working. You should have, everyone should be updating something. So maybe even switching from the project needs 1 blog post a week to the person needs 1 blog post a week. That might even be just a good switch.
Does anyone who isn't like me or Jarrell or Asher have opinions on this? Like, I mean, honestly, you guys are.
I can talk to you guys later too.
Yeah, that's also
Yeah.
true.
I was thinking maybe it would be a good idea to automatically, knowing nothing of the system, automatically assign a mentor to each project with a person who hasn't done RCOS before, and just say, have a weekly meeting, even if it's a 10-minute checkup, and have that start, be the start of mentor responsibilities.
Yeah, that'd be pretty good too.
Sort of like how SIS does it, where like, in this case, you don't get a smiley face, you get a member of your mentor type.
The advantage of mentors being able
In
to
fact,
take
there
projects.
is, some of these suggestions are all in GitHub page. If you go to Wiki or GitHub page, there are some of the things I write it down. For the newbies, I have a Wiki page. But if you give ideas, I can give permission to any of you to update GitHub Wiki page on RCOS Observatory Wiki page. So you can update it.
Yeah, I think there's just like a big giant link, like click here if you have no idea what you're doing. Click here
Yeah,
if you do.
I have said that I have one link for news.
Our mentors, like, since we're all assigned a mentor, is that written anywhere?
Not yet. That was one of the things.
It's totally
We're
written in a
secretly
spreadsheet
watching
none
it.
of you have access to except me and Jarrell, Professor Morgan.
Okay, that's what happened.
You haven't heard you're probably doing everything you need to be doing.
Yeah.
But at the same
Right.
time, you don't
Okay,
get
so
content.
apparently some of the things I tried to start last semester have carried on.
Yeah.
But they've carried on with the fact that everyone had a mentor last semester, and nobody knew who it was. Right? So it's just the same. So it's just maintaining code, keeping it up and running. It's just that this code helps keep RCOS running.
Yeah, I think like I should just pick some
I
secrets.
think we actually.
Yeah, I'm thinking now that I know where James is to do it. Does anyone else have any questions?
I know I sent emails.
Yes.
I didn't.
I could have one last set of comments. First off, thank you, that's a cool presentation.
Yeah.
Also, I've been doing summer orientation for incoming freshmen. You guys might remember that as an incoming freshman back in the day. We have somewhere around 120, I'm guessing, incoming freshmen. I've been talking a lot about RCOS Now we're getting a lot of students who are like, yeah, I heard about it through a friend or someone I already know who goes to. So I think we're going to have a good influx of people in the fall and in general. With that said, as you know, we have a few more weeks left of the summer, and then we have some of August off, and then the semester begins August 26th. Definitely, this is the first call for mentors for the fall. Let me know, and we can help. Or we can start kind of getting these so-called rules in place, policies, and make them kind of streamline the process. I do have bad news for you. You're already kind of aware. Morphe's going on sabbatical, so we're in trouble. It's just going to be me at the whatever as the head of this Morphe one. So definitely, the more mentors I have, putting this all together is going to be very, very helpful. Keep this momentum going.
The one thing that we should also have is the momentum is there, and if I drop dead, it should go ahead, go
Are
on.
you guys
That's
all
a
familiar with
motivation.
something called the bus number?
Yeah,
Computer
that's right.
science?
Yeah.
So the bus number is how many members of your team can get hit by a bus before you can no longer continue your project. You want that number to be as high as possible, if possible greater than the size of your team.
So,
No, like if you have one guy in your team that knows one feature and he's the only one, your bus number is 1. Because if he gets killed, you can't do your project anymore. All right, thank you.